Here's what happened. Since my 2018 burnout, I have gotten these different habits in my life that have kept me away from hitting burnout. So I call them my burnout-proof habits. And I feel that there's this thought about what it means to be consistent with burnout-proof habits, with your habits overall. And it's this idea that it's going to be perfect every day. And you're going to have perfect conditions. Shit's not going to happen to you. Life won't hit you with distractions or some crazy situations that come up in life that causes you to have to change your entire plans in your day. I want to tell you at no matter what level, because I envisioned, I get to a certain level and then I won't have any more problems. Like, where's the magic potion I got to drink so that all my problems go away? And I want to remind you at whatever level of life you're going towards for your vision, there are going to be challenges and it's not going to be perfect. So I want to get into today with what it's really like to be consistent with burnout proof habits. This is Make Burnout Extinct. I'm Robert David Weeks. So I'm going to get into the problem. I'm going to connect to burnout and I'm going to share with you 3 of my burnout proof habits and what it's really like for me to be consistent with these burnout proof habits. And I'll put it in the lens of how it can impact you as you are focusing on being consistent with your habits. And what I want to share with you is a framework that is going to help you. It's a new framework that I have come to realize with being consistent with my burnout proof habits. And it's 3 phases that you can remember, which is the awkward phase, angry phase, and autopilot phase. So I want to help you to get to the autopilot phase for all of your burnout proof habits. But I want to come back to the problem. What is that problem? So I feel like it's like, yeah, what is that problem? Like, you can respond back to me directly. So it's thinking back to that of, what is your vision of what it means to be consistent with burnout proof habits? What are some of the thoughts that you're having? Because I'll share with you mine and it may relate. So when I thought about it for being consistent with my burnout proof habits, I thought every day I'm going to make this happen from the beginning. Like, I've decided this is a habit I want in my life. So day 1, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to get it done. Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, all the way up to like day, 1,000. It's every day it's going to work out. That's something that was taught to me, like, oh, that can happen. Another one that I had was that there will be a point in my life where I will have perfect conditions in order to allow that to happen for all of my habits. I will be motivated all the time. I will have plenty of time to be able to make this happen for these habits. I will not have any distractions that come into my focus. I will not have any crazy, weird situations that come up or moments of all of a sudden I get a call and it's like, you got to go deal with this problem that's coming up with your family or friends or partner. Like, none of that's going to happen once I get to a certain level. So it's all bullshit. Like that's what I discovered for myself. I'm like trying to figure out a fancier way of telling that to you, or like fancy, like a better way of saying that, but it's bullshit. There will never be perfect conditions. That's an important reminder for you. There will never be perfect, or you will never be perfect as a human being. Like, I know it's something we can strive for. What we can work on is how to be the best version of ourselves, the best of us, the best partner that I can be, the best storyteller that I can be for you, the best interviewer I can be for you, the best researcher that I can be for you. Being able to focus on the best is, I think, a much better strategy rather than focusing on perfection, because it doesn't exist. So that could be something that you've been thinking with being consistent with burnout proof habits. So what does that mean then? What's like going to the problem here? Well, what that means is that there are going to be off days. There are going to be off moments of you not feeling like doing these habits. There are going to be moments where life hits you with distractions and you get to decide how you show up and take responsibility and face those. So when we can go with that type of expectation and reality check, it can be a lot easier to be consistent with these burnout proof habits and to give yourself some grace at the same time. So for me, it could be something that you're challenged with right now. I struggled a lot after my burnout with honoring commitments. I would say one thing the night before of, okay, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and then I wake up at 7 a.m. the next day. And then I beat myself up internally, mentally of like, dude, shit, you didn't wake up at the time you said you're going to wake up. You're already starting this off terribly. Like, you're a failure. You suck at life. It would get to that point of like that intense negative spiral of chatter to myself. So if you're in a similar place, I get you. Now, you can, what I'm here to tell you from personal experience is you can get better at that, where you are honoring your commitments. Is it going to be perfect? No, because again, that doesn't exist. But for the majority of your commitments that you make, honoring those, you can do that. It's possible for you. And so I want to remind you of that, of what's really going to be important to remember is the small wins. The small wins, they lead to the big wins. And so when you can remember those small wins, it stacks up over time to help you out for momentum. So again, how this connects now to burnout is really important, because it goes into what we talked about with the feeling of the shame and the frustration and anger that can build when you aren't consistent with your burnout-proof habits. That stress and anxiety that can bubble up. It can bubble up throughout the day, where you feel like with that balloon, it's filling up with air, similar to the body. It's filling up with pressure with all that stress and anxiety. And if you aren't addressing that and releasing that air out of the balloon, releasing that stress and anxiety out of the body, then all of a sudden the balloon's going to pop, and that means you've hit burnout on that spectrum. And I don't want you to get to that point. So if you can remember that first, no day is going to be perfect. Like it's not, perfection doesn't exist. So remembering that perfect days aren't going to be out there. That can be a moment to give yourself some grace, to realize that and recognize that shit can happen to you, where it's the saying, like, shit hits the fan. That happens. So you can prepare for it. The other one to remember is this quote or it's not quote, it's more of like a shift in mindset. I learned this from one of my mentors, John Butcher. That I think is going to be helpful for you. And that is going into this with the commitment for your habits of 100% commitment. You're committed to implementing and being consistent with the burnout-proof habits that you've created. And again, those burnout-proof habits are like your plays for your burnout-proof playbook that I've been sharing with you. So, and I'll give you 3 again for examples that I use. So with that, you're 100% committed to being consistent with these burnout-proof habits. So when you have a day that you miss, or if it doesn't ideally work out at the right time that you wanted in that day, instead of all of a sudden realizing, shit, like now I don't know if I'm going to do this tomorrow, that's where 100% commitment comes in, because you're committed no matter what every day to show up and focus on being consistent with these burnout-proof habits. So 100% commitment is better than 99% commitment. And that's something that I learned from John Butcher that I think is so powerful, where if we can just take the doubt off at the beginning of, are we going to do this, are we not, and just be 100% committed, that lessens the weight that we're going to have to feel mentally to step up each day and be committed to being consistent with these habits. So that's another great reframe to go into it, is like, are you 100% committed to this thing? Just do that. And then you every day, you won't have to decide if you're going to do this habit or not. You just know you're focused on doing it, with the realization that not every day is going to be perfect. Now I want to get into, I want to highlight that one more time for you. So you have this. Every day is a new day to reset. So this doesn't have to be a thing where a week goes by or a month goes by and you're going to have to wait another month to then restart and get back on track with your habits. You can do this. Every day is a new day to restart, which is awesome, because you can shorten the amount of days that you miss, or the amount of hours that you've missed doing this habit that you've been committed to. So I do want to make sure that you know that it doesn't have to be something that you drag out for a few days or a few weeks or a few months. You have an opportunity each day to reset. And it's catching yourself. If you miss a few days, which has happened for me, that's a reminder to you. I've had a few days where I've missed my burnout-proof habits, especially at the beginning, in the awkward phase. And what I had to remind myself was, I'm still 100% committed to this thing. And I showed back up, and each day was a new moment to reset. And I think the longest streak I've had for missing something was like 6 days, if I remember right. 6 days, 7 days, a week, and then I got back on track. So even if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you want to keep trying to shorten the amount of time from you not doing the action to you doing the action. And just continue to documenting it is going to be so helpful. So if you can keep track of your habits on your phone or a piece of paper, you can then look back on it over the course of a month, 2 months, 3 months, and you can notice patterns and realize that, again, you're 100% committed to this thing. So you don't have to have that pressure that you put on yourself of, oh my God, am I going to do these habits or not? You're already focused on doing this and being committed to it. So that's going to be really helpful. Now let's get into the phases. I want to talk about that for you. The awkward, angry, and autopilot phase. I want to break down the context of it for each one, and then I'll get into how they connect with the 3 burnout-proof habits that I'll get into for my own life. And this is new. This came up, I think earlier today. Came up from looking back now on, I think 2018. So we're in 2024. So this is 6 years. Looking back on the 6 years and reflecting, this came through for these 3 phases. You're going to have the awkward phase with a new habit, where it's like a workout. You think about that for a new exercise that you're adding into a workout. At first, it's awkward for the body to adjust to it. There's the term for reconnecting with certain muscles called neuromuscular re-education. And what that means is your body, you literally have to re-educate your muscles of how they function, how they work. And an exercise, with a new exercise coming in, you're going to have to figure out how that new exercise flows so that it can flow seamlessly with your body to implement that. Similar to a habit, you got to think about it in that way too, where a habit coming into your life, it's new. So it's got to get used to what it's going to look like in the day, what's going to look like, in the week, in the month, in the year of your life. So with that awkward phase, it's just recognizing that can come up. And that at the beginning can be the moment where a lot of times people drop off from staying consistent with a habit. That's where a few days go by, that turns into weeks, and then you've had that moment where a few months went by and you're like, shit, maybe I should get back into working out or creating movement, in my day, or focusing on waking up at a certain time. That awkward phase is going to, what's going to happen in that moment is you could feel a lot of embarrassment of, oh man, I'm not great at this. It's really sucking right now. So that can come up. Another one could be the shame of like, okay, what if people are going to think? How are they going to judge me, with me looking really bad at this? I want to just remind you that's natural to feel that. Honor those feelings, but breathe through those feelings and keep moving forward because it's part of life. You don't have to let that stop you from continuing to make this a habit, because I can tell you personally, it does get easier with these habits. You're able to, one, get better at them. I think about it for the workout, you're going to get better at these exercises in your workout, and get used to it. So it's just remembering that this is a phase of it. It's not going to be your reality. I go back to this quote from Alex Hormozy, which is, now is not forever. So it's remembering that, like, now the phase that you're in, the awkward phase, is not going to be forever. You just got to continue to push through. But where it will take you is then the second phase, angry phase. Now, this phase is where also a lot of people get tripped up, because this is a moment for the body to try to push back against a new habit becoming really consistent and moving on to the next phase. And what I mean by that is this is the moment where the body is starting to recognize that this habit could become part of your daily life for the indefinite future. One, that is a beautiful reminder for yourself of how close you are to moving to the phase of autopilot when you're in the angry phase. And it's to recognize that this is something that can naturally happen in your habit formation, where the body will resist. And so what can happen is you can literally, after, let's say, 3 weeks of you working out consistently, there's going to be a dip. It happens. It could happen after 3 weeks, could happen after 3 days, could happen after 3 months. But there's a dip that happens where the body resists, because it's going to create uncertainty if this new habit becomes part of your daily life for the indefinite future, because it's a whole new path of life that you've never experienced before. because you've never had this habit be in your life indefinitely. So when you can realize that, all of a sudden the body's just creating uncertainty for like the body there's a fear of the uncertainty and the unknown. And that will cause, that's where the whole self-sabotage comes in, like this idea of, oh my gosh, why am I self-sabotaging? Like, oh, I can never get this like right. I can never, stick with this habit. Like I always have this phase where I get off track. Well, that's just because the body is like trying to push back in that fight or flight and freeze mode, where it's fighting back. It's saying like, oh, I don't know if I want this, because it's going to create uncertainty. So when you can just recognize what the hell is going on, another moment to give yourself some grace, to breathe through, because you're going to feel angry. You're going to feel angry at the situation you're in. There are going to be those days where you're going to have to like really push through the resistance and show up and continue to focus in on this habit. And there's going to be some moments where you're going to be like frustrated as to like, man, like I'm always waiting till the last minute to get this habit done, or I missed today. Like shit, all right, I gotta reset and show back up tomorrow. So that phase does happen, but that means you are so close for this to move on to the next phase, which is the autopilot phase. Now, when you get to the autopilot phase, that's like brushing your teeth. That's the best example I can use. Is something that you're automatically just doing. You're not going to feel like it every day, but there's so little friction there from you choosing not to do it. Or no, there's such little friction from you, like not feeling it and you doing it. Like you're still going to do it. There's not indecision there, because it's just something that's automatic. That's just something part of your day-to-day life. This phase is where you've made it happen, for bringing these burnout-proof habits to make it at the easiest level of being consistent with these. It doesn't mean you still won't have those challenging days where you'll miss it. Life, things happen and days can get crazy. I think about that with my schedule of traveling and going all over the place. Like sometimes I'll miss brushing my teeth once in a while. Like it happens. Or, flossing. It happens. But you don't have all that guilt, shame, frustration, anger, because tomorrow you're just going to get back on track, because it's such easy to get back to reset and get back on track with this specific habit. So that autopilot phase is an amazing phase to be in for these habits, and I want to help you get there. So let me share with you 3 of the burnout-proof habits that I have focused in on, that I have gotten to the point of autopilot phase. The first one is celebrating the effort. Celebrating the moments that were scary for me, where I can be proud of myself. I go back to the story of walking around the park near where my parents' house is, when I was living with them. I did that to get out of the house, because I was so scared of getting out of the environment, out of the house. I was worried. Like at that point, I mentally was like so scared of everything around me that was going to hurt me. And it was that paranoid, like I felt paranoid. So I remembered having to take the step of going to the park and walking around the trail that was around this pond. And just what I decided to do to get out of my comfort zone, and was scary at the time for me, was to just wave and say hi to each person I walked by. And I was so scared to do that. Like I felt so weird, and like I felt like I was going to be a burden, but I'd like go as I'm walking by. It's just a few seconds. I'd wave, say hi. Some people would engage with me and they'd be like, oh, hi, back. And I was like, oh, this feels good. Nice, cool. And then other times, like people would ignore me and I'd be like, oh, okay, shit. But I can't remember a moment where someone was pissed at me. So that for me feels like an awesome win. But it was after doing that, I would celebrate that type of moment, or I'd celebrate sending out an email to someone I wanted to connect with, or doing a presentation. I would celebrate that effort. And I have a little move I do, which is like an X with my arms, tap my shoulders, and then raise my arms up and then do a whoa sound on the bottom. But for me, at the beginning of this habit, it was awkward. It was one of those things where after 2018, that's where I started doing this. It was awkward at first. Like I felt weird celebrating, small little moments of, oh, I woke up the time I said I was going to wake up. So now I do this big whoa sound. But with celebrating my effort, and I've talked about this before, what it does is it allows the body to register that this is something that energizes you, because you're literally like squeezing your body of excitement and then letting the energy flow. And that is a reminder to the body of, okay, this is something that one is energizing and then something I want more of. So it makes it easier to stay committed to doing other things that are scary or moments that I can be proud of for my life. But there is that awkward phase. And that it's just realizing that there are hundreds of times I could celebrate in a day and I missed one or two. And at first it was awkward to like do this in front of people and celebrate. Like I now am able to do that. But at first I was like, I had to go to my like room. Once something happened, I'd go to my room or go to like a place where no one was around. And then I'd celebrate. It'd be like, ooh, like a sneaking away. And I'd be like, I'd celebrate that way. And then I got more comfortable to do it in front of other people. So that is one burnout proof habit, to give you an example. But the beginning, awkward. The next one that I want to share focuses on the angry phase. This was my outside time. So I saw a stat, or like I think it was either, I believe, it was a survey, but it was the statistic that Americans on average spend 90% of their time indoors. And on what that means every day for outside time, it's like 2 hours and 24 minutes. Blew my mind. I'm like thinking, shit. Like, okay, how do I stack up? Like I had to document my time. And it pissed me off because I realized there were some days I was spending as little as 30 minutes of outside time. And I was feeling like shit. I wasn't feeling great. And for me, I was like, okay, maybe this could help of getting outside. I'm seeing some benefits of getting outside, creating movement, like to feel more energized. So I had a goal that I set out of 2 hours. That's what I focused in on, even below the average. I was just like, I gotta get 2 hours and be consistent at that. There were some days where it was so fucking hard to get 2 hours in. I remember there's one night where like, I think it was half the time I had left, like an hour. It was super late at night. I was living with my parents. It's Maryland. It's winter time. It's cold. And I'm like, shit, all right, I'm just going to be on the porch and I'm going to hang out here. And I was angry at the habit. I was like pissed off. I'm like, fuck, like, I don't want to do this shit right now. It's cold. I don't want to be out here. I don't feel like it. And what I noticed was that was a moment for me where, I was pissed off and angry. I'd wait till the last minute, but it got me over this hump. Again, it was the resistance was really intense there. And then it gave way for my body. My body recognized, okay, no, this is something he's committed to. Even in this type of situation, he's committed to this. So all of a sudden that resistance was able to subside, and then it became a lot easier to just keep showing up. I realized I learned again, it goes back to remember, learn the lesson from the mistake and then let go of the mistake. That was a moment for me to realize I got to start earlier for getting outside. And I resetted for the next day, but it became easier. And for me, it was in that moment where, although I was pissed off, I waited till the last minute. I was like, I'm committed to this thing. And then it helped me to give myself grace when I missed a day, if I didn't get the 2 hours in, because that happened. I didn't get the 2 hours in, but I was able to remember the moments of intensity that I did, and then I could get back on track again. And got it to the point where it then became autopilot, where now I go out for my morning walk. I've talked about it before of one of the plays you can do, the work walk. So I do that. It becomes autopilot. And then even if I notice myself midday realizing I'm not getting enough time in, I'm going to be like, okay, let me just get outside. And it's so easy. I'm just like, all right, I'll get outside, even if I don't feel like it, and I'll go outside, and all of a sudden I'll feel so much better. So that right there, I want to make sure that you to remember that there will be that phase where it feels like angry and intense. Then the other play I want to share with you, final one, is working out every day. Since my 2021 story of not being able to do barely being able to do one pull up at my brother's gym and in his garage, I committed to working out every day. That was a commitment I wrote down for a habit. And what I recognized when I was doing that was I felt more energized. So it goes back to what I talked about that I learned from Dr. Casey Means in the book, Good Energy. That was also written by our brother, Callie Means. Got to do the shout outs. Got to make sure I do the shout outs. How it talks about how with movement, you are able to be more efficient in producing the energy with mitochondria. And then over long term, if you're continuing to create movement, your body produces more mitochondria, which is then is producing the energy through the ATP, which is the energy currency of the body. So I didn't know all of that when I started off, but I as I was working out and focusing in on movement, I realized to start small. It goes back to that moment where I would have some days with working out where I would just be able to do one push up. And that for me meant I got my workout in. So I want to remind you that starting small, there's no shame in that. There's no issue in that, because you can go from starting small with one push up to then having an hour workout, being able to have that time to be able to do it and focus in on it. But at the beginning, especially at the beginning, starting small, there's no issue with that, because it's going to help to compound over time of making this consistent for you to focus in on. And then once it becomes on autopilot for you of, okay, for me, it was working out. How I think about it is now movement. So it's either morning walk is movement, going and doing one push-up is movement, doing an intense 1 hour to 2 hour workout, that's movement for me. So any one of those, it becomes autopilot. Like I don't even have to really think about it. I know I'm going to get some sort of movement in for the day. And when I get into the autopilot phase, that's where I could expand it out. That's where I could be like, okay, let me try this 1 hour workout, or let me try, to try these new exercises and have this whole half day to focus on my fitness and check out new exercises that I can implement in the whole week. But I've gotten it to that phase of autopilot, and how that started was one push-up was my workout. That's how I thought about it. So those are 3 examples for you for burnout-proof habits. And what I want to remind you by sharing all those 3 is that, again, with the consistency, that's what it really looks like. Some days you're just going to be able to get, the one push-up in if you're focused on a workout. And that's checked off the list for workout. Like the body is just going to remember you doing it. It's not going to remember how much time you allocated to this thing. It's just that it's a reminder of like, okay, this is something you do every day. And then there are going to be some days that it's just not going to happen. And what's important to remember is the difference between it not being able to happen because you missed your morning, alarm clock, and it was, you overslept. All of a sudden there's no way you can go back to that and be like, okay, I'm going to wake up again and start my day. Like, you can't do that. But it's remembering at the end of the day, do you still have time to be able to focus on one of these burnout proof habits, like movement? Let's say you still have 2 hours before bed. Could you just go out for, could you do one push up before going to bed? Because if you have that time, that's another moment to remember to end on a push for the day, because at the end of the day, you're just going to remember the last thing you did. And if that is like that push of you pushed yourself to do one of these burnout habits, all of a sudden you're going to remember that when you get started in the morning, and it's going to help you to stay motivated, like help you to keep that motivation high to show back up and continue that momentum of being consistent with these burnout proof habits. So that's another thing that I use is every day, every night, I focus on a push in some way. If that is, I focus more on movement, where it's, I'll do corrective exercise, posture. I'll focus on my posture. I'll focus on stretching. I will also do like a quick, one push up. That could be another example, but something that just pushes me a little bit more. So I hold on to that going into the morning and to take that momentum into the next day. What I want to remind you though is you're capable of this. You're capable of being consistent with the burnout proof habits. Each one of our lives are different. We have some similarities here, but like, you're going through your own challenges, struggles, amazing opportunities in life, and your own schedule. So it is remembering that there's going to be different paths to get to this point of being consistent. But I just want to remind you that it's not going to be perfect. And it doesn't have to be perfect in order for it to be consistent. And that's something that is really important for you to realize, is that by celebrating these small wins along the way, they're going to lead to the big wins of your life, of you moving towards who it is you want to become, the vision you have for your life. And it is a beautiful journey to be on, a grueling journey to be on, a shitty journey to be on, and the most amazing journey to be on. It's all of it. And it's honoring all of that, all of those chapters of life and seasons of life. And it's a reminder of you are absolutely capable of being able to do this. So you got this. If you like this episode, please don't forget to rate this podcast to help get this message out of Make Burnout Extinct. And you can share what resonates with you from this episode by connecting with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Please send me a message. I take the time to look through those messages, so you can send them my way. And it fires me up for what this impact is having in your life and in your journey, especially in this one of being consistent with your burnout proof habits. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. I don't take that for granted at all. Like, I don't. Without your support, it wouldn't be possible for this mission of Make Break Extinct. I'm so excited to reconnect again soon. And if no one has told you yet, I believe in you, because I know as human beings, we tend to play down what we're truly capable of. I want to remind you that you're capable of this. You got this.